Lessons in chemistry. That's right, folks. Apple TV is back at it again. This time around with a new mini-series based on the best-selling book. And isn't that just evocative of the times we live in, where a best-selling book no longer gets optioned to become a big movie? It's just, what if you got 8 episodes to tell your story, you know? That's cool. And people like that. That's been the trend for too long. And I don't want that to be the focal point of this video, just talk about like people turn books into limited series now and it doesn't feel like it does it justice anymore, or it's like, yeah, finally we're picking apart the perfect moments of this book to make it into a cinematic darling. Now we're just telling the whole book as a thing and we can crop out certain things to put them in specific episodes. That's what we do now. But Lessons in Chemistry is here nonetheless. This is the Brie Larson-led series that I feel like is going to be overlooked by a lot of people solely because of Brie Larson. And we should spend a minute talking about her. I feel like we should, just because it's just a victim of circumstance for some reason, where no matter what she does, there is going to be people talking about her performance in particular and why she does a project. That sucks for her. Like, there's always going to be a vocal audience that is against everything she does while she's delivering some great stuff and is a fantastic creator in her own right. It sucks that that's going to happen to her. Luckily enough, this is not a show that is being talked about by a lot of people. So I feel like she's going to, for the most part, escape the criticism of her existence. I love her to death. I think she's a great actor. She seems like a genuinely nice person who is really like sweethearted and genuine. And if things happen in her career where she doesn't want to be a part of it anymore, I fully understand, because of the backlash she's got for doing absolutely nothing. People just hate her because she's a woman who has a voice, and that makes people upset. And being a woman who has a voice makes her the perfect person to play, what is the name of this character? Elizabeth Zott. I forgot it, whatever. Based on a book. A book I never read. A book I probably am not going to read. Not because I have anything against it, but I'm just like, yeah, I see. I know what we're doing here. I like this show a lot. I do think knowing there's an end in sight and that it's just a limited series does hinder some of the enjoyment, where you're like, if you know the book, what are you doing watching this? Because it's not going to go anywhere. You're just suddenly like, yeah, okay, yeah, this is where we're ending up and we're going to this specific thing. There's a lot going on here. For the 8 episodes that we have, there is more going on, and we're jumping to not different time periods, but like different ideas of what the story is through a lot of it. She starts off as like this lab assistant working at this university. She wants to secretly do some of her own research in private. People don't like that when she's doing that because she's a girl in a male-dominated industry. She meets this nice guy played by Lewis Pullman. They start to fall in love and they work together on their research. She gets pregnant and then he is killed. I say these are spoilers, but they're really not, because that happens in the first couple of episodes, and then the rest of the show is her learning to balance this idea that she wants to work, but she's not taking it seriously, and even less so now that she's pregnant, to fast forward, she is now an adult woman, barely getting by helping people for research, and then suddenly she is thrust into a situation where she becomes the head of like a local TV show where she does cooking, and it kind of like sparks this revolution where women realize they can find power in themselves. They don't have to be like these domestic housewives, and it also helps spark a revolution because one of her friends and neighbors is this woman who is leading like the charge against like demolishing their neighborhood, and it becomes this idea of just like she is a voice in the community for a black community, and now Elizabeth has the ability to help that community and these people on a scale that the network is not comfortable with. And you're like, that is a lot to throw into one season of a show. And you're like, okay, I mean, it is a book, so I get it. There's balance between all of those things. But just on paper, you're like, that is a lot of stuff to talk about in 8 episodes. I think it handles it pretty well. It balances what we're dealing with each episode to a point that I'm satisfied. I think you get the narrative crux here. When new characters are introduced, like their stories kind of like take the headline and we focus on those. It does hold together perfectly well without any real damage being done to like one of the arcs. Everything feels like it's done perfectly. Every character is given a moment to shine, and I appreciate that. Brie Larson is a great actress who is comfortable in this type of story, because she's kind of stiff and aloof and more focused on being her own person than satisfying the needs of the people in her life, which does lead her into some tricky circumstances, but she does that so well. Brie is so good at like portraying this. She does it stiff. The moments where she does break are earnest. The moments where she does get angry are earnest. She does it so well, like this natural intensity of somebody who's uncomfortable and doesn't want to be a part of this. Brie is really good at that, and she has great chemistry with all the characters in this show, including Lewis Pullman, who is not a main focus. And when he shows up, there's just like this electric energy of like, this is a man who understands her and who she can understand. And we want to see that relationship blossom. It's cut short, and she's ultimately left broken without that thing that she finally had be the fulfilling part of her life. It's very interesting that way. I do kind of respect it. And when their daughter becomes a main focus point, the narrative does shift again to seeing what Calvin was and how we can use him and who he was supposed to be. And that's kind of an interesting element too. And then it's just like, what if we hosted a baking show and now we had to do like network TV stuff, which is very interesting. This is all a period piece too. It's set in the 50s, which is why there's that harder element of like, women are responding to this thing on the network, but the male executives don't get it. That type of vibe. And that all works really well. I do think you have a creative team behind the scenes that is just working in unison to create that perfect thing. Everyone gets how to perfectly tell this story, how to perfectly frame this story, and none of that feels awkward. Everything looks great. The sets look great. The production is great. The writing is surprisingly sharp. For a character who is, held to a lower standard than the men, she holds herself really well, never like surrenders those moments. And it's a really nice thing to see that she elevates some of the other women in her life, that they finally feel comfortable where they can say these things that they've never said before. That's a really cool thing to see in a show like this. And then there's the subplot by Aja Naomi King, who plays Harriet, and she is just like the neighbor who is trying to help the city and her community. And that is like a surprising angle that didn't need to be taken for, I think, this narrative, because it focuses on like the chemistry of it all. Like, this is a woman who loves the sciences, who grew up religious but realized this is what she likes more, and certain elements of her life have led her to that belief. And then the romance of it all is another part of it, and like the cooking part of it, to do like the civil rights like side project. You don't really need that B story in here, but it just kind of fleshes it out more, because again, we're doing TV, so we need the extra storyline. But you could wholly see, if we were doing a movie, how that storyline would become like a footnote. So maybe actually doing it on television benefits that story, but does it affect the whole narrative of Elizabeth? Kind of, sort of. And also, because we are doing television, we can do different narrative choices. We can do flashbacks to characters, flashbacks to Calvin's history, flashback to Elizabeth's history. We do one episode that is from the narrative perspective of their dog. And that is insanity to me, where this dog's like, I was in the military. This happens in the show, okay? This dog was in the military. It ran away because it wasn't good at sniffing out bombs. It found a nice lady named Elizabeth, and she found a nice guy, and they became a family, but he couldn't protect his owner when he got killed, and now he feels bad that he can't protect his owner in Elizabeth. And I'm like, why are we doing this narrative crux for the dog? That is so specific and weird. I don't hate it, but it's just so surprising to see in a show like this. I do think it's going to suffer the side effect of just becoming another thing on Apple that no one's going to remember in a week or in a year. But there's a lot of good acting in here. There's some strong performances. The story is well written and well created. It is something to talk about, and it's talking about that well. The story it's trying to present is really well crafted. It's a good show, and it's a smart chemistry show. It talks about the sciences in an appropriate way. It's a beautiful love story, and just like finding that family and finding that happiness you never thought you could have. It's one of those things too, and it balances it all together pretty well. Could this have been a movie? Yeah, I think so. I think Brie could have handled this in a movie as well. But doing 8 episodes of the show, where sometimes the stories don't need to be this long, or we dwell too much on a specific moment, that's just, par for the course nowadays. I can't complain it for being the thing that everything else is. Brie does make this a little bit better, though, than the rest. So, lessons in chemistry. I'm going to give an 8 out of 10. Now, thank you all for watching this review. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. As always, you can check me out on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. And of course, I will catch you in the next one. Have fun. Stay safe. Good luck.